Tonight we're going to be talking about mastery and control, which is the last core issue in the 7 core issues in adoption and permanency. Before we get started, I'll introduce myself quickly. My name is Darcy Solom, and I am the post-adopt coordinator based in Grand Forks. I cover the Northeast region of North Dakota. I've been with post-adopt since January of 2020 and have learned quite a bit since then, and enjoy being a supportive family since I've started. I also love seeing the connections made, not only with parents connecting the dots in their parenting journey, but also with the connections families make with other families throughout the state. In my free time, I enjoy being outside, whether it be going for walks with my husband and our spunky pup, Kona, gardening, or a bonfire. Tonight we will go over the basics of the books. So what is it about the 7 core issues of adoption, or the 7 core issues within adoption and permanency? We'll do a quick recap of the core issues, and then we'll talk about the basics of mastery and control, what each of them are, and how it relates to the adoption and permanency realm. The core issues within adoption and permanency are experienced by all members involved in the permanency of a youth, both with the youth themselves and the adopted and biological families. I think it's important to note that as a society, we often see adoption and permanency as a great joyous event that needs to be celebrated, and that people often benefit from it. We often see that adoption affects primarily one generation, but does indeed affect multiple generations and multiple people in the adoptee's life. Birth parents, maternal and paternal grandparents, adoptive parents, and so on and so forth. I do think adoption and permanency is great and should be celebrated, but along with that, it's important to recognize that there are some heavy topics that do need to be recognized and also really thought about and normalized. So in hopes of this presentation and the other presentations in relation to this, I hope that some of these core issues really are normalized within your home and within your community. In the 1980s, Deborah Silverstein and Sharon Kaplan-Roja researched various topics relating to adoption and permanency. They began writing books and interviewing people involved within the adoption and guardianship realm. These two researchers, Silverstein and Rosa, came to find that those affected by adoption, whether it be the adoptee, the parents, or the birth parents, which are also known as the constellation members, all experience 7 different emotions or tasks. Their findings can be summed up with the following core issues: loss, rejection, shame, guilt, identity, intimacy, and mastery and control. Through learning more about the 7 core issues in adoption and permanency, you may find that each of the issues is intertwined and that loss, the first of the core issues, will lead to the next, and so on and so forth. The original findings focused on the adoption community itself. The authors of this book, Sharon Kaplan-Roja and Allison Matson-Davis, saw the effects of adoption on the larger communities as family building options have expanded. So basically, the authors took what they learned from the original findings and applied it to the many forms of parenting that we see today: adoptive, birth, kinship, and foster. The point of the findings from the research is to help bring an understanding to the lifelong issues that arise not only in our youth who are achieving permanency, but also for the families involved with the youth. These families have a very unique experience where there is both joy in family building that has stemmed from pain, which leads us to the very first book that tips off the 7 core issues, which is loss. Loss binds all members involved in the adoption and permanency realm together, as it is the common factor that brings all members of a constellation for a particular case together. Loss begins the journey and can affect these members for the rest of their lives. both within the initial loss and the secondary and ambiguous losses. This could impact constellation members, causing distress and confusion. Some examples of initial losses for constellation members include loss of family members, loss of feeling normal, ownership of their story, and altered family trees, which leads to loss of family history, culture, and lineage. Secondary losses include medical history, the inability to spend special holidays such as Father's Day and Mother's Day with a child or with their parent, biological parent, power over their life's circumstances, and sights, smells, or sounds that remain constellation members of the person that was lost. Ambiguous loss for constellation members can include the ability to parent a youth who doesn't have trauma, the inability to know how the lost member is doing at any given time, a lack of grave or rituals to commemorate the loss that was experienced, and finally, a loss of a role such as being the parent of a child birthed, the grandparent role if adoption of their grandchild, etc. It's important to be mindful of how loss can affect all members. Loss can lead to mental health issues such as anxiety and depression. It's also important to support each other through the losses experienced instead of discussing whose loss is greater, which can be detrimental and hurtful. Being aware of how these losses can be impactful, as well as mindful of how to work through these issues relating to loss, can be very beneficial for all members. Some examples to help work through these losses include creating a list of all the specific losses that have been experienced in one's life, acknowledging which has been the greatest loss for that particular person, acknowledging what has helped in working through these emotions held as they relate to loss, creating a memory box or another ritual to acknowledge the losses, or having a mindset of gratitude and forgiveness, as well as a mindset of helping others. These losses that have been experienced by constellation members may become personalized as they're trying to better understand what's happened to them and to help understand what their role has played in the events. The losses experienced by constellation members can be and are often experienced as forms of rejection. The rejection can be real or imagined and can lead to feelings of abandonment and isolation throughout other aspects in one's life. Constellation members may be on alert for rejection in future scenarios, which is named anticipatory rejection. This can be found in social situations where these members are on guard to protect themselves from other potential rejecting situations. Members within the adoption permanency realm may also be impacted in a variety of ways. Birth or first families may experience rejection and or fear further rejection. For example, they may fear rejection if they have another child and worry that this child may be taken. They may fear and feel rejection when their partners desert them in a time of crisis. Birth parents may feel rejection from their children if the child doesn't have communication with them. Extended family members may feel rejected if they're not part of the final decision for the youth. Adoptees or individuals in the permanency realm may feel a sense of rejection being in the placement they're in. These youth may feel as though the separation from their parents may be their fault and their birth parents are rejecting them for some reason. Youth may feel a sense of rejection from birth family as someone in their birth family did not come forward to adopt or provide a permanent home for them. Youth may feel that their community rejects them as the vocabulary around them or other youth with similar backgrounds include unwanted, unplanned, a mistake, hard to place, so on and so forth. Youth who are adopted or in kinship foster care may find themselves not asking for what they need. They may find themselves trying to be grateful and not complain as the fear of further rejection. Youth may continue to have unhealthy relationships because they view themselves as unworthy of having healthy, loving relationships due to the rejection that they may be feeling. Adoptive and permanency parents may also feel a sense of rejection in a variety of ways. Some examples include a description of not being a quote unquote real family, as if their family isn't permanent. Adoptive and permanency parents may also feel rejection from their children, as they might not be viewed as their real parents, either through a child searching for a birth family or if the child isn't knowledgeable. As you can see, all constellation members may struggle with these feelings of rejection. The following may ring true for constellation members. There may be an increased sensitivity to further rejection, feelings of being judged, unwanted, different, and not good enough, and they may ask questions such as, why me, or why did I deserve this? It's important for constellation members to address their feelings of rejection. Some of the ways in which this can be done include listing not only the people that members feel rejected by, but also the people whom they rejected. Addressing how the member feels when they reject someone, how the member feels when they feel like they've been rejected, and why they think that they are rejected. And then finally, creating a way to identify, express, and release these feelings of rejection. Feelings of rejection can lead to shame and guilt. Feelings of shame and guilt are social emotions that are meant to keep people from acting in a sense of self-interest. Shame and guilt are impacted by family members, religious institutions, and societal expectations. Shame relates to self and is a feeling of doing something bad, undeserving of deep connection and happiness. Shame impacts a person's self-esteem. Guilt, on the other hand, relates to others and feelings of responsibilities of an offense, whether this offense is real or imagined. An example of this includes, I did something bad. Guilt impacts a person's sense of self-worth. Constellation members may experience shame and guilt when attachments are broken, people are lied to, manipulated, or important information is held. They place a child up for adoption or lose a child into the foster care system. They're not able to save a child from experiencing pain or sadness. Constellation members may experience shame and guilt when parents favor one child over another, or parents have not fully accepted the youth who is living with them. Having access to more than birth family has access to, and finally not being able to stay with birth family, yet other siblings are able to. Feelings of shame and guilt can have an impact on all constellation members. Shame and guilt can impact these constellation members through nightmares, mental health, feelings of being unwanted and undeserving, low self-esteem and self-worth, feelings of being weak, and that they're at fault for their history. It's important to gain a sense of self-worth. Statements can be tailored to the individual to be either used for the self or the child to become more meaningful, but some mantras to start off with include, I am good, valued, important, and worthy. It is okay to ask for what I need. I can trust and depend on others, and others can trust and depend on me. I have strengths and talents. And finally, I am loved and I am lovable. There are 4 pillars to continue to grow that can affect a sense of self-worth. And those pillars include connectedness, uniqueness, power, and role models. The losses, the feelings of fears of rejection, and the emotions of shame and guilt must be grieved, which leads us to the next bucket of grief. It's absolutely acceptable and life required to make room for grief for all constellation members. Grieving allows for healing, both for the heart and for the mind. There will not be a quick fix, nor should grief be rushed or shushed. Grief is universal and it is very individualized and personal. Everyone grieves in their own way, and there are many factors that affect the way in which someone grieves, such as the age at when loss occurred, the individual's temperament, their gender, life experiences, culture, the nature of the loss, and an individual's support systems. There are some great myths about grief: that it should be kept quiet, that it is important to remain stoic, and that we can get over grief quickly. It's important to remember that these are myths. People cannot and do not get over grief. There isn't a way to grieve correctly and accurately, and people can have a variety of triggers that remind them of the losses within their life. It's important to learn how to manage grief instead of remaining strong and stoic. Constellation members can miss and grieve people they've never met, so it's important to remember to allow for conversation that allows for true, honest discussions and emotions to be shared. Constellation members may experience grief when the original separation occurs, anniversaries of when the loss occurs, someone asks a question that triggers feelings of loss, memories that surface that are in connection with the crisis, loss, or a person that is lost. A youth's understanding of their adoption and life story unfolds, and a search and reunion occurs. It's important to know that grief can be triggered from a variety of ways, including sights, smells, and times of year. It's equally important to address grief appropriately and adequately. Some of the ways to address grief include connecting with a trusted person who can be leaned on and talk with when grief hits. One can list feelings that are felt when experiencing grief and list the ways that these feelings connect to their five senses. Noticing ways in self that grief is both welcome and denied, and acknowledging why grief may be avoided. Others maybe find themselves writing a letter of forgiveness to themselves or to others. Support groups can be very beneficial, especially if they're adoption and permanency focused. And then acknowledging how anniversaries may affect the self or others within their home, and be available to address the difficult times with these important people. In working through and acknowledging this, a person is able to form a solid identity, as each individual sections we've discussed affects an identity. All humans are on a journey to find out who they are and how they fit in a world that surrounds them. Theorists such as Balby, Erickson, and Marcia talk about identity formation. Balby connects the importance of healthy attachment in early years, assisting individualism, whereas those with broken or disrupted primary attachments may struggle with identity formation. Erickson took an interest in identity and has models that represent that of gaining a deeper understanding within adolescent time, being at large point of this where youth are figuring out who they are as a person. Marcia took what Erickson worked on and furthered the work, stating adolescents may choose between one of two routes to their identity. An individual may either avoid the commitment in forming an identity, or they'll choose to do some searching and exploring, then commit to an identity that fits them best. Adoption and permanency can alter one's identity. Constellation members may view themselves as having an identity that has an additional layer, and it's not complete. External messages, such as stereotypes about each constellation member, can become internal messages about the identity of each constellation member. Losses occur within permanency and need to be addressed so individuals can achieve a healthy identity. Identity issues that may be experienced by constellation members include when medical issues arise, when people ask, are those your real children, or are they your real parents? Or when people ask birth or first parents, how many children do you have? Special days that create questions about one's connectedness, such as Father's Day, Mother's Day, and birthdays. In order to gain a strong sense of identity, it's important to gain as much accurate information as possible about the birth family, genetics, and how this can impact the individual child. It's also important for the youth to gain an understanding of how their permanency parents raise them, such as nature versus nurture, and how this can be impactful. Creating a life book with as much information as well as pictures can be helpful in identity formation, acknowledging and addressing the most difficult aspect of self as it relates to the specific part of the constellation role. And finally, being a part of a support group where identity can be openly shared and supported by other members who understand. Roja and Maxon share that it is human nature to desire a belonging and to get emotional needs met through human connections. Healthy intimacy requires a person to be comfortable with themselves and to be able to join in an emotionally meaningful relationship. It's been proven that healthy and secure parent-child attachments during early development are necessary to create a secure sense of future intimacy with others. In order to achieve this healthy, secure parent-child attachment, parents need to do both of the following. They need to realize that their child is a separate person from the parent, and they need to be actively attuned to their child's changing needs and meet the child where they're at. It's normal for families to have moments where parents aren't completely in tune with their children. These moments are normal and learning moments for the parents. It's where there are larger happenings that can and do happen within family units that occur that can disrupt the parent-child attachments, which leads to the child to lack in intimacy. To build intimacy with youth, parents must know that this will be built differently with each child. With adoptive permanency youth, this intimacy may look differently compared to the birth children. It may have to be more deliberate due to the losses within the youth's life and the array of emotion the youth may hold due to the nature of their life circumstances. It's important to create connections and rituals with the youth and stick to these rituals. It's also important to trust the youth, to build trust with the youth. For example, you must mean what you say and say what you mean, and then follow up and do what you say you're going to do. There are many more ways to build connections with youth, birth parents, and other constellation members, and it can be found in this particular portion of the book. Mastery and control is the final sprocket on the wheel of the 7 core issues in adoption and permanency. The ultimate end goal for constellation members involved in adoption and permanency options is to gain mastery over their life. This essentially means that constellation members strive to regain power and control over their life. So in discussing the final section, we'll begin with control, which then leads to mastery. In this section of the book, you'll learn that control refers to the power to influence behaviors or the course of events. It's important to note that there are quite a few things that people can control. For example, their smile, their beliefs, their friends chosen, the amount of social media that they take in, goals, decisions, to an extent, activities, and the list can go on. Just as there are things that a person can control, there are things that people cannot control. For example, the weather, the way that others choose to act, past mistakes, how others act and treat others. And simply, we cannot control other people. For constellation members, there is a loss of control in a very impactful areas of life. No control for the child in whom they're placed with in foster care. Foster parents may feel no control over some basic decisions of the youth until permanency is complete. In the adoption permanency realm, it's important to note the control we do have and what is out of our control. There are a few different approaches a person can take in response to the control that is lost. The first response to the loss of control is passivity. This may lead an individual into having a victim mentality. Individuals may feel stuck as they feel they have no control in their life. They can feel a sense of self-pity and sadness, and that they don't get the validation that is needed. A person stuck in this mentality may feel that they've wronged and be in a place of complaining, either verbally or with their self-talk. If a person continues in this mindset, they may become stuck. They may think they're unable to stop and challenge their way of thinking about the events that led them into this place. Interestingly, the mindset not only affects the mentality, but can also have effects on other parts of their life. For example, the individual may seem as though they lack confidence, as they may be afraid to take up space, they may appear to be nervous, and they may mumble quite a bit. The second response to loss of control is to have the best offense. This may be seen where there is a reaction or aggression towards any perceived threat in order to maintain control. There's also a strong sense of need to be perfect in all domains. But if looking deeper, there's a sense of deep powerlessness, feelings of powerlessness, and self-loathing. It may be seen that individuals within this realm may try to pressure others to change as a path to really come to terms with the areas of emptiness that they're struggling with. By not addressing these areas, the person remains wounded instead of addressing, which ultimately impacts the individual in having mastery over who they are. Constellation members do need to determine what they can control and what they're not able to control. If a person allows themselves to address their loss of control and work through these honestly, they're taking steps to gain mastery over their life. The process in achieving mastery in one's life is a journey with quite a work that needs to be done. The journey towards mastery can be done through difficult emotional work and can be achieved by those who are willing to be curious, open to learning, are okay with making mistakes, and are willing to continue to practice. There are 4 steps in mastery, which include self-awareness, gaining knowledge, practice, and then finally mastery. Self-awareness, this is the inner work done by the individual. It's the finding of oneself in the inner at the inner of who the person is at the very core. The core of oneself is deeper than when the world has gotten to the individual. It's deeper than the cultural norms placed on the individual, deeper than opinions that have been placed on a person. It's important to be flexible and gracious as the journey towards self-awareness might have bumps that aren't expected and take a lot to unlearn what is taught. Happiness, joy, fulfillment, and gratitude can be found in the road of self-awareness. Authenticity is also gained from the realization of self-awareness. For example, an adoptee might gain authenticity as they journey through understanding their complete story. The pieces of their story gained from others, considerations on bits and pieces of the adoptee's life, and considerations of the missing pieces help gain a sense of this is who I am. The sense leads to an authentic self of who the adoptee is and a sense of mastery over their life. Gaining knowledge is the second step in achieving mastery. This step requires identifying what knowledge and skills are needed to gain mastery. A person must be curious about themselves, their beliefs, and be curious about what they don't know about themselves. A person can learn to love their story, the tools they've gained, as well as what their life has taught them. An example of gaining knowledge includes the adoptee understanding their core issues as it relates to their story, considering the information they do have, and challenging their thoughts or ideas on this information, identifying and searching for people and systems that can help the individual in claiming and reclaiming their life as an adoptee. Part of the second step is to learn that there might be high emotions such as sadness and frustration, but accepting this as part of gaining knowledge. The third step in mastery is practice. This involves taking what was learned and gaining knowledge and putting it into play. Individuals in this phase of practicing will take risks, make mistakes, find the strength to pick up and try again, challenging thoughts that have been learned along the way, adding pieces of information into an identity, throwing out pieces of identity that are no longer the truth is very difficult to do, and it can be very exhausting. During this step, individuals may feel overwhelmed and want to quit, but it's important to connect with others who can support during this time, those who may have experience or have the best interest of the individual at hand. The fourth and final step is mastery. This is where self-awareness, newly learned material, and practice of who one is comes into the play of newly defined person. This becomes a new, different view of oneself as all the pieces come together of who the individual is and of the world in which they live in. This is a journey to mastery as the individual learns exactly who they are through challenging one's thoughts, learning, and practicing what they've learned to define who they are. All constellation members will be affected by mastery and control and can feel the impacts of it, both if achieved positively or negatively and positively. Birth family. Birth parents may feel victimized through permanency and adoptive process of their children. Birth parents may come through the journey feeling as though they have no power over what happened to their life as a unit or their children ongoing. Birth parents may feel as though they don't have a choice as to what they need to do to ensure their kiddos come back into their custody. Birth parents can overcome and come to a sense of mastery by reclaiming their self-esteem through community and supportive people. Mastery for birth parents can come from acknowledging their actions and what happened and the removal of their youth. Mastery for birth parents and extended family comes through forgiveness. Adoptees and individuals raised in permanency homes may find mastery. They may feel as though they had no choice in being placed in foster care or adopted. Due to this, the youth must cope with the random nature of how they joined a particular family. Adoptees may feel a loss of control when they don't have a say in where they attend school, the community in which they're placed, or an overall sense of control of anything in their life. As we've learned, the loss of control may be a need to be overly controlling or under controlling in areas of one's life. Adoptees and individuals raised with permanency options may experience mastery when they regain control over what was lost and reclaim what is theirs. There may be a sense of realization they didn't have control over some aspects, but they can control what their meaning of family is as it relates to them. They can control their future and what it means for them and who they want to become. Adoptive and permanency parents may feel a sense of mastery through a variety of ways. But first of all, they also may feel a sense, they may struggle with it as well. Adoptive and permanency parents may feel as though they have no power over whom they parent, when they'll parent youth, or for how long. Permanency parents may have a sense of powerlessness when it comes to a youth's perception of adoption and foster care, permanency options, as well as the pain that occurs as part of the trauma endured by the youth. Mastery for adoptive and permanency parents occur the moment the youth joins their family as they are working on becoming the parents that the youth needs. The showing up daily to be the parent the youth needs is mastery of parenting a youth who came through a different permanency option. The daily grind of working through fears, failures, and triumphs, as well as assisting the youth in working through theirs, is mastery of parenting. There are a variety of ways to develop mastery within the lives of those impacted by adoption and permanency plans. Adults can do a lot of work within themselves in increasing mastery over their own lives. The work for adults really comes down to doing a lot of introspective work. Some pieces to really consider while working towards mastery includes listing ways your power or control in your life, and the adoption of permanency realm is lost, listing other ways in which you felt loss of power and control, and then thinking about how these situations make you feel, and then how they're similar to in the relation of adoption and permanency, and then identify who empowered you during these times. It's important for parents to list 5 beliefs about life, then consider where did these beliefs come from, if they're true, have they the parents ever changed these beliefs, have any other beliefs that have been held changed, and if so, why? How do these beliefs make you feel, and who would you be without these beliefs? It's important to identify what brings meaning and purpose to your life as a parent and as a human. Direct energy, thoughts, and activities into what brings meaning and purpose to your life. Let go of the need to feel loved and approved by everyone. It's important to remember that as a parent, you matter to many people, and it's important to focus the time and energy towards these people. It's important to ask yourself, what do you hope to accomplish in the future, and then putting time and energy into these goals as well. And then it's important to have a good enough decision and to be at peace with it. And then just to be aware that worry and anxiety will go down. There are steps that can be taken by parents to help their youth gain mastery within their own life as well. Some examples include focusing on the youth's strengths, talents, and attributes, consistently sending the message to the youth that they matter despite their actions, what issues they may have, or the possible outcome of their life, of their foster adoptive placement. Remembering that both verbal and nonverbal cues are needed. Statements such as nicely done, thank you for expressing yourself, or you made a powerful statement can really bring out that mastery of a youth's life. Smiles, touch, gentle reprimand, family pictures, and staying home with a sick youth may send messages to the youth that they matter as well. Parents can allow their child to make some decisions tailored to their age and developmental level. So for example, allowing a youth to choose activities to do in a day, such as having a yes day, allowing them to pick a meal, providing 2 choices of shoes, and allowing the youth to choose which they prefer to wear, allowing the youth to choose if they'd like to brush their hair by themselves or have the parent help them, creating a family tree that resembles both families as it relates to the child or the youth can be very beneficial. Replacing parental anger with empathy, and then creating a family collage that includes all family members in the adoption and permanency constellation. Well, the series done by my colleagues gives a synopsis of the book, The 7 Core Issues Within Adoption and Permanency. I do encourage you to continue learning about these core issues. I encourage you as parents to dive deep into what these core issues mean for you, for your youth, and for your family as a whole. I encourage conversations within your family to understand where they're at, and encourage you to continue to do the work with them and with yourself to achieve the mastery in which you've been working towards. And then it's also important to remember that the work is not done overnight, and you can challenge, and it can be challenging at times for a variety of reasons. So it's important to be gracious with yourself, with your children, and know that you don't have to do this alone either. You do have your posted up coordinators who are willing to be of support to you and your family, and we would love to step out and assist you if needed be. So I've listed our phone numbers if you'd like to reach out to us. If you'd like to go back and listen to any of the core issues, please visit our website. Otherwise, just checking this book out and reading through it might be very beneficial for you guys as well. Thank you.